G'day guys, I'm Bula. If you're watching this from the islands of Fiji, Western Force versus Fijian Dura Super Rugby around 14. We got one more week to go next week before the finals, and yeah, what can I say? I have a little bit of theory of my own as to why Fiji struggles to win outside of Fiji, and then other teams seemingly just cannot win in Fiji, no matter how hard they try. And I think it comes down to fitness. I think it comes down to fitness for the Fijian players, especially. You know, when you're playing in like really hot, steamy conditions, right? Both teams are drained out of their energy, and Fijian Honduras has been more clinical in terms of taking 3 points when they're playing in Fiji, and that has actually yielded them a number of pretty big upsets, including one against the Hurricanes earlier this year, and and the Brumbies as well. And there's some pretty big upsets as a result of that. And when they go overseas, that fatigue, you know, uh, that fatigue issue is no longer there for the opposition. But it looks like to me may still be a little bit an issue for the Endura players themselves. I've seen some, reports in the past now that, because of the fact that the Fijians, they transition from the seven style, that they're all very explosive, that the endurance has always lacked a little bit for the national team. Maybe that's still an issue here. Like today, I've kind of noticed maybe like 20, 25 minutes in, the the 4-pack was really gasping for air. And then the scrum really deteriorated in the second half, even with the reserve props on the field. And Harry Jones and Holmes just did a bit of like the Western Force, their starting props actually seems to get better as the game carried on, as the fatigue kicked in against the Drua, the big Drua props. And the Druas have some pretty good props. So you got a Dongay on the field. They're pretty good props in terms of the technical skill set. And my assessment is that maybe the fitness is just not quite there for the Fijian Honduras, all around when it comes to Super Rugby. And again, I saw some report, like documentary maybe, that they had to change up the players' diets, the national team's diets, when they transition from sevens to the 15 game. Maybe that's something the Juris needs to be doing. I'm not sure I don't know what exactly is happening in terms of their diet. Are they just eating whatever the players can muster for themselves, or is there a plan for diets? But maybe that's my little theory as to why the Fijian Honduras seems to win a lot more at home, because everybody's tired, right? In the heat, nobody can perform. But when they come out of, and so the difference in fitness is much closer, or much less, much less of an issue, or much minimized in terms of the difference, right? And also obviously the wet and humid conditions could play into that. When you're tired, catching the ball and everything, greasy conditions becoming more and more and more difficult as you're mentally not able to stay focused, right? Whereas when you come overseas, none of that is a factor anymore, and your pure fitness level becomes more, obvious of an issue for your team. That's my little assessment. Let me know your thoughts. And yeah, I thought that was especially the scrum, when he just like deteriorated throughout the game. Kind of, for me, it's a bit of an indicator of that problem. Not to say that the fitness was horrendous. I thought the backs were pretty fit all around. Maybe the 4-pack has a bit of a fitness problem for the jurors that needs to be looked at. There was some quite interesting stuff going on in this game. So first of all, there was a battle for the top 6. The Western Force, if they had got a bonus point, they would have moved in rank, in position to potentially win, potentially still making the top 6 next week to play against the Waratahs, if they can beat the Waratahs with a bonus point. Because if they end up in 32 points, the Reds might lose out on the 6th. If they lose the Fijian and Dura next week at Suncorp, and then the point difference will come into play because they're pretty close, and there's a likely chance if you score a bonus point, you're gonna have three tries ahead of the opposition. There's a likely chance you're gonna win ahead of the Reds over point difference. But boy, I did not feel like this was gonna be this close towards the end of the season. The Waratahs is still mathematically a chance to get into top 6, especially with the if the Duras can pull up an upset against the Reds. The Moana Pacifica almost put up an upset today against the Reds. Last minute, the Reds had a nice little play out of a scrum for, I think it was Joe Campbell, went in for the try. But if it wasn't for that, Moana Pacifica could have had a massive, massive upset over the Reds and, yeah, really positioned everybody in a much better, much more of a contest going into the final week. But yeah, it's still not completely out, but we are all praying that Endurers can get one out over the Reds next week. For the final showdown at Suncorp. So it's gonna be interesting, and I'm really looking forward to that. There was I will just go through some of the positives. I thought the breakdowns were pretty good for the Endurers. Lots of really, really good turnovers at the breakdown to diffuse the Western Force attack. There was a couple of really poor referee TMO decisions in this game. So the first of all, this final try here. This Lomax try was clearly a forward pass. There was a lot of angles being shown here, so this is probably the best angle. This was clearly a forward pass. You can see that the ball travel out of the hands forward. The player is on the 5-meter line, and Lomax called the ball way ahead of the 5-meter line. This should be a no try. But then again, you could argue that the Western Force didn't have to throw that forward pass to get this try. So it is a bit of 50-50 call here. But then again, earlier on, if you're Fijian Dura fans feeling a little bit cheated off, earlier on, there was a pretty obvious penalty try, in my opinion. And that was not given against the Duras. So on the 50th minute, let's go back to here a little bit. 50th minute. So this one here. This should be a penalty try. So there was a crossfield kick, and there was a Lomax against Valentini, Campbell Valentini, Rob Valentini's brother, and Valentini just knocked the ball out with his fists out of the bounds. Now this is a penalty, yellow card. Even if it's not a try scoring situation, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to just smack the ball out dead. It's not rugby league. Rugby league, you are allowed to do that. But this should have been a penalty try. There's no defender. Maybe you could say that he's coming through, so this should be a yellow card at least. I mean, this you might not say that this is in position to cover it. This should be a penalty try, in my opinion. And he just knocked the ball out dead. Like, knocked the ball dead. I don't know how the referee thought that was. Yeah, this one. He just palmed the ball forward there. It's not even it doesn't even look like a attempt to catch where the ball kind of just bounced awkwardly out. It looked like he straight up knocked the ball out. Didn't even look like he tried to catch the ball, in my opinion. Yeah, it looked like he just knocked the ball out. He didn't actually make a motion to even catch the ball. This should be a yellow card, at least, and I think it's a penalty try, and the referee just said, play on. Especially, the Western Force had a penalty advantage right here as well. And this, not only that it stopped the try, potentially, but it also killed off the penalty advantage. So this is very, very cynical. I'm not sure. Yeah, so I guess the forward pass maybe cancels out a little bit. Who knows, right? You'll let me know in the comments. But yeah, it is the referee, again, a little bit, I think, substandard, especially when it comes to some of the TMO decisions there as well. I think the Fijians kicking the 3. I always talk about this in my channel. I feel like when the team kicks the 3, the mentally kind of switches off a little bit. And sure enough, the Fijian kind of kicked the 3. There was a try immediately that was disallowed for knocking on, and then follow that through to that forward pass try as a result of the kicking 3. But it worked for the Fijians in Fiji, but just didn't quite work here against the Western Force. There was a bit of an interesting play from Lomax. I don't actually think I've seen this. Not as far as I can remember in rugby union. So imagine there was a bit of a kicking back and forward, and the ball went into the 22 for the Western Force. And then there was a guy chasing the kick. Lomax got the ball, and the guy was right in front of him. And then there was a Western Force guy there. Lomax could have just passed. Usually, every time, the guy would have passed the ball to his teammate who's standing in the middle of the field, and then let them take the kick. Lomax instead stiff-armed the guy that was pressuring him whilst fending the player away. He used one hand, dropped the ball, and kicked it, punted down the field whilst fending off. Could you imagine this? He was fending, and then he goes, like, kicked the ball with one hand, holding the ball. And then it was not a bad kick either, to be honest. I thought it, got like a nice, 40 meters out of that. But I have never seen a player do that in rugby union. You just pass it to the guy, your teammate that's in the middle of the field, that would do the kick with a better angle. And then he just I have never seen that. Never seen that. I mean, you can please let me know if you've seen this before. A fend and kick, right? A fend and kick. Maybe I have the time. Maybe I can show you. Do I have a timestamp here? Like somewhere, maybe I could show you. A fend and kick. I have never seen this before. Oh, here it is. Okay, maybe you can see this. Like, it's just something that I had, please let me know if you've seen this. But I thought it was just crazy. I thought it was quite something, right? Quite something. Like, so here it is, right? Here it is. Lomas gone. It's got someone in front of him. He tried to juke him. This guy is here. He could have just passed him. Everybody would have passed it here, right? He fends, and then he kicks. He takes the kick himself. He fend and kicked. Like, it's just crazy. I've never seen that in union. But anyway, fend and kick. Still quite entertaining, regardless. Oh yeah, and one last thing. It's like what, the 4th or maybe 3rd week in a row that one of the I think this is the 4th week in a row that one of the Fijian Dura player has been sent off with a yellow card as a result of playing the ball on the ground cynically, like sticking his arm out and slapping the ball out of the halfback. Rombitu got like what, 2 or 3 yellow, at least 2 for doing this. Like he got one done last week, but you could argue that last week he was in a desperate situation. But this week, what's his name? Tui Tupou, I think his name is Tui Tupou. The number 13, I believe he was. Again, he was in the rock on the ground, stuck his hand down and slapped the ball off the hand of the Western Force halfback, and there's no choice but a yellow card. Just, I'm not sure what's happening there with the Western with the Dura there, but you really can't do that against the Reds if you want any chance of winning the match next week. So let's have a look at the match stats of the game. 3 tries for the Western Force, 2 for the Fijian Dura, 384 meters for the Western Force, 242 for the Fijian Dura. And then 22 defenders beaten, and then 23 defenders beaten for the Dura. We've got, let's reset that for a bit, 13 turnovers conceded against the Western Force, 16 against the Fijian Dura, 222 tackles made for the Western Force. That's a lot of tackles. 23 missed tackles, 102 for the Fijian Dura, only 22 missed tackles there. 29 kicks in play for the Western Force, 21 for the Dura, 1 conversion missed for both teams, 1 penalty goal for the Fijian Dura. In my opinion, the downfall of the team. 15 lineouts for the Western Force, 2 lost, 11 for the Endura, 7 lost overall. 4 scrums, no loss for the Western Force. It's probably quite dominant. There was penalties everywhere. 3 scrums for the Fijian Dura, 1 loss on their own feet. So just some absolute hammering. 14 penalties conceded against the Western Force. I am surprised they did not get a yellow card from so many penalties being given out. Nowadays, getting double-digit penalty count is quite rare these days, and 14 is very, very high by today's standards. 9 for the Fijian Dura, and 1 yellow card for a cynical play in the ruck on the ground. And so let's have a quick point summary of the game. So yeah, 10 minutes into the game, there was a lot of back and forward play, and there was a penalty for the Fijian for the Western Force. They went for the more, and in classic Western Force style, Kazano rams through for the try, 7 points to 0. 18 minutes into the game, the Drua had their own line out. They set up the more, nice little crash on the middle of the field. It looked like a bit of magic trick. one of the guys picked up the ball and he looked like he's gonna dot the ball down, like dot the ball down right in front of him. And then as he's like reaching out to dot the ball down, and he flicks the ball away to a guy standing at like next to like 2 meters next to him, and he crashed over under the post. So it was like a magic trick because everybody's like, I'm just like, everybody's looking at the guy who's trying to dot the ball down, and then suddenly a guy was scoring, a couple meters away. It was quite interesting. So 7 points to 5. 27 minutes in the game. There was there was a Fijian Dura line out, and lots of a nice little crash ball at 10 for the Duras, and then the ball was switched back quickly to the blind side, and then the guy on the win, Tongiatama, goes in for the try. 12 points to 7. Dura takes an early lead. 33 minutes in the game. Lomax did the defend and kick. So that's the first half score. 12 points to 7. Dura leads. Second half, 50 minutes into the game, there was a deliberate knock on. We saw that did not give a penalty, but they still went back for the scrum. The Western Force had a massive scrum, just start inching forward. There was a penalty advantage. Pick and go. Ikawasi rammed over Ledawasa, the little guy at number 9. Dunked the ball down. 14 points to 12. After this was a yellow card for the player playing the ball on the ground against the Duras. And then with the play in the bin, the Duras kept building. Lots of pressure. They built about 20-something phases in front of the Western Force try line before they got a penalty. And then they couldn't quite execute that into a try. And then they take in the 3. I didn't agree with this because I do think that for 2 reasons. Number 1, you're losing the momentum. Number 2, because of the fact that you have a play in the bin, it's easier to attack and hold on to the ball than to defend. And sure enough, from the kickoff, the Western Force recovered the ball. And there was a nice little play where one of the Western Force guy went over the try line and knocked the ball on. 69 minutes. We just saw it there. The Western Force had another little play, a penalty advantage, crossfield kick, and then not crossfield, a penalty advantage. The ball went out to Lomax, and then he got a forward pass to get into try. 19 points to 15, and then 78 minutes. It looked like there was another try for the Western Force. There was a little high ball up in the air, and then Lomax and Peach and one of the I think Rombitu ran in. All 3 of them ran in together, and the ball bounced from Peach to Lomax, and Lomax was able to get the ball offloaded to I think it was Jeremy Williams who ran in for the try, and then it was not Williams. I think is it Williams, one of the big locks that ran in for the try, and then referee came back and caught out a knock on amongst the Western Force players. So a little bit, there's a few execution errors for the Western Force. The scoreboard could have been probably a bit higher if it wasn't for that. But hey, a win is a win. And then I think Fijian Dura fans, yeah, the forward pass is something that, it didn't need to happen. I would have scored anyway. But yeah, it is a bit of a disappointing way to lose the game. So anyway, thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Have a good one. I'll see you guys next week. Cheers.